Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do another round of recent horror reads. This time I'm focusing entirely on books that I received for review. Before we get started, I do want to do a booktuber shout out. I am so thankful that my channel has grown so much, and I really believe it's my job to pay it forward to recognize other channels that you might be interested in. And so today I want to talk about Coral from Pretty in Papercuts. Her channel definitely isn't small, but I don't think I've ever officially shouted out on my channel, and I love her videos so much. So she is another horror booktuber, and we have fairly similar tastes. She reads a combination of a lot of new releases, including indie titles, and she is very honest with her opinions, and so you get negative reviews, positive reviews, recommendation videos. She does really good videos on different horror tropes, so like bugs or haunted houses, things like that, creepy children. And so if you're looking for more horror content and you are not subscribed, highly recommend it. She also does read some other genres like fantasy, and I do actually enjoy her taste in those other genres as well, but primarily she's horror. So if again you're looking for more of that, she is definitely one that you should have in your subscription list. All that being said, let's talk about my reading. This is a fantastic list here of some buzzy books that have either recently come out or are coming out right away, and I'm really excited to tell you about them, so let's get started. First, let's talk about Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. And this is a horror novella that is set in the US following a group of Mexican older teenage girls that are just recently graduated. They are gathering together for a seance right at the beginning of the story, and something appears to go wrong, and one of the girls starts acting as if she is possessed. She is crawling along the floor, she is bleeding. It is just this disturbing scene right in the very first chapter, so no spoilers here whatsoever. And from there, the rest of the story follows the girls as they're trying to figure out what happened. Was this girl just acting out or playing a part, or is she actually possessed? We do get part of the story from her perspective and get to see what is actually happening. Now, you probably heard about this book if you watched my previous videos, because yes, I included it in my best books of 2021 list so far, and there's a reason for that. I love this one. First off, the cultural aspects were fantastic. It is own voices, and you really get that Mexican aspect, which of course is often highly tied into Catholicism, at the center of the story, because yes, this is a possession story with the possibility of an exorcism. And you know I love that subgenre, and it is done so well. This book is fiercely feminist, and it's just sharp and cutting. It's definitely adult. This is not young adult whatsoever. There is sexual content. These are very much young women coming into their own as adults, and this book takes the tropes of possession stories and really turns them on their head and gives the power back to the female characters. I love this one a lot. I gave it 4.5 stars only because at times the narrative felt a bit fragmented, just the way the story was told, the way the characters switch perspectives, I thought was a little bit jarring at times. I did read an advanced reader copy, so it's possible that that has been edited further, but despite that, despite the fact that this felt a little bit like a debut, even though I don't think it technically is their first story or first novella, but this one was so well done. And if this is the author at this point in their writing, they are only going to get better, they are only going to get stronger, and I just am so excited to read more by this author and to see what they come up with next, because I'm definitely going to put them on my must-read list, because yeah, I was just so impressed by this one. Definitely caught my attention, and there's a reason that it's a front runner for the year. And so if you have not picked it up, if you are a little bit leery of more small press or indie titles, this is definitely one you want to check out. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Next, we actually have a thriller, and that is The Girl Who Died by Ragnar Jónasson, and this is yet another one I received from the publisher for review. This follows a young woman living in Iceland, and she is basically struggling. She is trying to make ends meet. She can't really afford her apartment or afford to go out and really have a life. She's had some grief in her own personal life, and In the beginning of the story, she sees a newspaper article advertising for a position to go work as a teacher in this really isolated small community out in the boonies of the country. And she is very much interested in taking this on because it seems to be a really good opportunity to just get away, to maybe get ahead in life, and to just get out of the rat race of being in the capital where she just really can't afford to live. And so the story follows her moving there. She moves to a place where there are only 10 people in the town, and she is tasked with raising, or rather teaching, the 2 students that are living there. And so this story is primarily about her experience living in this isolated community, getting to know the residents, and so it's very character focused. It's very closed and atmospheric. Of course, you get the wintry cold of Iceland all throughout this story, and it's just very quiet. This story is technically a thriller because there is a murder mystery at the center of it, but I'll be honest, it really didn't feel like it was at the center of the story. It actually kind of felt like a subplot because I was so much more interested in this young woman and her experience moving to this place and trying to fit in, trying to keep herself entertained when there is nothing to do, nowhere to go. And this is very much a case that the characters ended up being more interesting than the murder, which is actually kind of a funny thing to say. Not to say that it wasn't a good plot, but I think it was just very simple, and I just feel like I have read so many murder mysteries before that I don't think this one was anything particularly new. Certainly it was dark, not overly gruesome, but if you really like this author's work, you definitely want to check out this one. It's probably my favorite. I've read a few by him at this point, and I think this one might be his best that's been translated so far. And again, I think it just comes down to the characters because I really related to that young woman being in her early 20s, which I still remember being, and trying to struggle and get ahead in life and all that is very relatable, and I thought it was very well done. So I did enjoy it overall, even though the murder mystery itself was a little bit average. Next we have Near the Bone by Christina Henry, and this is another book I received from the publisher, and this is a story of a young woman who as a child was stolen away from her childhood bedroom by an older man who has taken her up to a mountain, and now they live supposedly as man and wife in this captive situation. At the beginning of the story, they start to wonder if there is possibly other people on their mountain and if they are not alone, and also there is some kind of creature possibly also existing on this mountain that might have some supernatural aspects to them. And so this is a horror story that definitely leans into the side of a thriller. And I picked this one up when I was in the middle of reading a whole bunch of review copies, and I was picking some up and they just weren't grabbing me. I wasn't sure if I was in a reading slump. I wasn't sure if it was me or the books. And then I read this one and wow, oh wow, it grabbed me in. I've said so many times what an amazing storyteller Christina Henry is, and she proved it yet again in this one. I was just gripped in. I was flipping the pages. I wanted to know what was going to happen next. It was exciting. I like the fact that while for the most part it reads like a thriller, you also have the possibility of these horror aspects, but the horror in the story is a little bit off the page. It's a bit more ambiguous, which I'm starting to really appreciate, that more subtle form of horror where there isn't necessarily monsters like jumping out at us in the page, but instead you know that there's something there, there's something outside of the cabin, in the cave, and you just don't see a lot for most of this book. And I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to say too much, but I like that little bit of mystery. And for me, I very much enjoyed the story, and it's partially because of my old love of thrillers that involve kidnapping and Stockholm Syndrome, all of that. For any of you that are more thriller readers, I think this one will really appeal to you because, again, the horror is very much minimized, and it's much more about this man controlling this young woman and her trying to figure out whether or not she should fulfill her role, whether she should escape, whether she should try to get help from these other people on the mountain, or whether she should send them away. And I just thought this book was very well done. If I had a criticism of this one, it's the fact that the main character is very young and naive in terms of her personality and how she shows herself. And that comes from the fact that she was stolen away as a young child and really didn't get to develop properly. She never really got to watch TV or the news or expose herself to the larger world. And so her naivety makes sense, but I also find it a very annoying character trait. And so if that's something that bugs you, it might bother you here. There are times where she just doesn't simply know a word, or a concept just kind of goes over her head. And again, it makes sense in the case of the story. I'm not criticizing the author for doing this, but it's not something I enjoy reading. So that was probably my only downside to this book, is that you have a character who's just in this very small bubble of a world, and it just makes her perspective very limited. But overall, very much enjoyed this one. I don't think it's necessarily reinventing the genre. It's not a story I've never read before. In fact, I feel like I've read it many times in the past. But Christina Henry has a way of telling these stories in a way that's very comforting. Not that it's not suspenseful and scary at times, but I really do enjoy a familiar narrative, and sometimes it's just very comforting to go back and enjoy those tropes. When they're done very well, it can be a very enjoyable experience, and that was very much the case here. So if it's not obvious, I highly recommend this one. Finally, I want to end out this video by talking about a short story collection that is Places We Fear to Tread, edited by Brhel and Sullivan. This is a book that I received from the publisher, Cemetery Gates. And while, yes, I've said so many times that I really don't accept any short stories for review, this publisher is one that I make an exception for because I just really connect with them. I find them very engaging, very story-based, and so they're just easy to connect to, and I always find myself finding several in the collections that I love. In the case of this collection, I found quite a few that I enjoyed. My favorite, unsurprisingly, was the one by Chad Lutzke, which is about a girl that is going to confront her best friend, who she believes is possibly sleeping with her husband. And there's also other really good stories in the collection. Gwendolyn Christie has one about missing girls. There is one that is about a Muslim version of possession and exorcism, so you know that I love that subgenre so much. There's also one by Michael David Wilson that is set in Japan and kind of had like a grudge feel to it. So overall, I enjoyed several of the stories in the collection. As always, some are going to grab me more than others. I absolutely love the cover art on this one and was really happy to accept it for review. And I'm definitely glad that I took the time to read it because, like I said, there definitely are some gems in here which I really enjoyed, and do remind me that I need to be a little bit more open to continuing to read short story collections, because sometimes they do work out well for me, like in this case. So that's it for this video. I'd love to know down below which of these books are you planning on reading, and I would also love to hear about any 2021 releases that you would like me to review in an upcoming video. I'm definitely trying to get my hands on as many copies as possible, and so it really helps to know which ones you are looking for feedback on. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you're new to my channel, consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror thrillers as well as science fiction and fantasy, and you can help me out by giving this video a thumbs up, sharing it around online, and hitting that notification bell. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.